It's Tuesday afternoon here at the New York Stock Exchange, and the equity averages are trading higher. Of course, all eyes were on the Dow earlier as the index hit new record highs. Joining me now is Tim Anderson of TJM Investments. Tim, great to have you here today.
It's nice to be with you.
Well, today we're seeing a rebound in tech stocks, and we did get that new record high for the Dow Industrials. But of course, all eyes will be on central banks this week, with the Fed announcing their rate decision tomorrow. But of course, all eyes will be on the language. But given what we're seeing in the equity markets and global equity markets for that matter, what do you expect to see in the coming days?
Well, I think what we've seen in the last few days has been very, very healthy, because I don't think too many people would deny that maybe the really high beta tech names were a little bit overextended. So you had that call by Goldman last week that it was time to sell some of the FANG stocks, and they did catch quite a bit of selling at the end of last week. But even the last 3 days coming into today, Thursday, Friday, and Monday, the advanced decline for the whole market was slightly positive. So clearly that money's not leaving the equity market. It's just part of this same very vibrant rotation that we've seen since the first of the year, and even since the election. The banks have been attracting some of that money. Some of the infrastructure stocks have been attracting that money. Some of the stocks that had the big run up and then the correction that were part of the so-called Trump trade have been now attracting some of that money back into their sectors. Clearly, retail and oil and the oil sector are probably the two real areas of concern.
Well, I'm glad you brought up oil, since this is the first time I'm speaking to you after the OPEC agreement and after last week's sell-off. Now, earlier at the beginning of last week, we did see oil higher, and then after those inventories, we saw a collapse in Brent as well as WTI prices. But for now, we are fairly range-bound. So what do you expect to see in oil prices?
Well, we are still range-bound, but I just think now there seems to be a lot of resistance at the 50-52 level. We'd kind of been 50, 55, maybe 48, 55. And I think that resistance level is coming down a little bit lower. And I think maybe we're going to be 45, 50. The reality is the world is awash in oil. And there's just tremendous amounts of supply of it everywhere you look. And, 42 had been like rock solid support for a while. I think there's a chance maybe we test that before the end of the summer.
And last but not least, let's talk about what's happening around the globe. Now, this week we do have the central bank meetings of the BOJ as well as SNB and BOE, but no change in policy is expected to come out from those meetings. But we know after given last week's UK elections, there's plenty of turmoil over there across the Atlantic. And we did see the British pound fall, but today we're seeing a recovery of the 127 level for the sterling against the US currency. But given that the Brexit talks are supposedly scheduled to start next week, what do you expect to see over there?
Well, that's a great question, because I think that there's been some talk that Prime Minister May might resign. I really don't believe in the soft Brexit concept. I think they either do it or they don't. And I think the likelihood is that it's still probably going to go through their market. Their financial markets are going to handle it much better than what a lot of people might expect. And probably the same. There seems to also be a very slow, quiet economic recovery going on in the EU, and that's probably going to temper any of the turmoil over there also.
Well, I guess we'll just have to see how this whole process unfolds over in the UK in the coming days. So as always,
and of course, we'll be dissecting the Fed comments tomorrow afternoon.
Okay, Tim. Well, as always, thank you so much for joining me, and thanks for your insight.
It was nice to talk to you.
Thank you.